I used to be a medical doctor, but gave up medicine in order to write. So far, I've written 6 books. The most successful was my first book, Falling Leaves, which made the New York Times bestseller list. My second book was written for children, and the title is Chinese Cinderella. And my latest book was a book of Chinese history, written for young adults. The title is China, Land of Dragons and Emperor. This book was commissioned by my Australian publisher, and is presently only available in Australia. And next year it will be funded by Random House in America. And I do have a copy for those of you who like to ask questions and answers. And one of them, if you could write your name will be drawn out of a kind of a lottery at the end, and you'll get a full free copy of the book. Today's panel is called Creativity and Innovation. And Joseph Conrad, who is a writer, called creativity the inner voice that decides. And Einstein named it cosmic religion. And I think all of us have wondered, is creativity due to nature or nurture or a combination of both? Why do creators create? Is it for glory, riches, or fame? Or is it to find truth, beauty, and order? Are geniuses born smarter than other people? Or do they invent themselves? Were talented people like Mozart, Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, Isaac Newton, Carl Friedrich Gauss, and the 3 panelists sitting here in front of us different from you and me? Given the same circumstances, could we have done what they did? Let us find out. My first panelist is Julie Su, and she's the director of the Asian Pacific American Legal Center. And she's the daughter of Chinese immigrants who valued education. Julie graduated from Harvard Law School, where she was editor-in-chief of the Harvard Civil Rights, Civil Liberties Law Review. She was awarded a MacArthur Fellowship in 2001 and listed as a Southern California super lawyer. When given the opportunity to excel, Julie rose to the top. Is her genius the result of her education, or was there something else? Julie, the famous psychologist, Howard Gardner, was, like you, also a MacArthur Award winner. For those in the audience who might not have heard of this award, it's called the MacArthur's Genius Grant. Each recipient gets $500,000 to apply to future creative works. Howard Gardner received his award in 1981, and Julie got hers 20 years later in 2001. Howard Gardner claims there are many types of intelligence besides the 2 that are tested in the SATs, which are the linguistic and mathematical. He said that there is a genius, like musical genius, like Mozart and Marc here. There is spatial architectural genius, like Frank Lloyd Wright. Athletic genius, like Tiger Woods or Michelle Kwan. Interpersonal and emotional genius. Intrapersonal genius, people who have a lot of self-knowledge. And naturalistic genius, which is a way with people who are great gardeners or a way with animals. I don't know whether any of you have seen the dog whisperer called Cesar Millan, who's on National Geographic Channel, and he's a genius with dogs. It looks like he can understand their barks. It's a wonderful phenomenon. This is a special type of genius also. So Julie, may I start with you? Would you tell us something about your childhood and schooling?
Of course. Thank you, Adeline. It's really an honor to be here. It's an honor to speak with you. I have to say that I'm used to being asked to be on panels because I was considered someone who was young and to have achieved what I come to. And I really appreciate the Committee of 100 putting know, I was very social and
Are
I
you
talked
trying
a
to
lot.
see if you can?
And my parents would always tell me
Actually, we don't have audio.
that I should talk less, or
I
at
don't
least
know.
not so
Mess up.
loudly. And at
Suppose we
our
should get,
usual Saturday
good
mahjong
audio feed for our
get-togethers,
camera.
where
I don't
the
know.
parents would all play
Past few
mahjong
days,
and
that's
we
okay.
run around
Today,
all day
no
and
more,
then stay
so
late and watch the
we're
love
trying
boat
to
at
figure
9
out what's
p.m.
going on.
On the way
So we
home,
can take
my
audio
parents would
from
always
him,
say,
because we're
yours
recording.
is the only
They will
voice
record
we
it.
can hear, louder
What?
than everybody
所以
else's.
它是有档期切
And
的，
I
对
was
不对
really embarrassed. And
No, forget
I
about
learned
that.
having your
Take care
voice
of our
heard
video.
was something to be avoided.
？Still trying to.
Today, as a civil rights attorney at the Asian Pacific American Legal Center, I find, perhaps
just trying to get your
ironically,
audio,
that
Yeah.
one of my great assets is the ability and willingness to make a lot of noise.
It's
And
right on my computer.
not literally, although sometimes it requires that too, but it's
If you take it, let
about
me know.
how to have your message heard and how to insist that the stories of people at the margins and those who would otherwise be left out of the system are actually heard. And so obviously this is not so much about the volume of your voice as it is about, for us, coming up with creative legal theories and having the courage to use them in the courts, even when we might lose, and about touching people's hearts and minds so that they too care about the stories of people who are otherwise left out.
先说现场，然后最好把它播。
I'm the first lawyer in my family, and although I had no models for lawyers, I did know how to be a translator. Like so many children of immigrants, I grew up translating for my parents, writing letters, making phone calls, explaining documents, navigating the adult world with adult interactions. And I was sometimes ashamed that my parents needed me. And now that I'm older, I understand better the reasons for that shame. The powerful effects of racism, the message to new immigrants and to people of color that we're inferior, and the deep and personal ways that we internalize that message. So that because I became increasingly convinced that law is really a language. And those who speak it get to decide who gets what in our society, who gets protected and who doesn't, who is a citizen and who isn't, who can get married and who can't, and who pays to keep our economy going and who doesn't. So I went to law school to gain the tools to become a translator in the language of law to those who were disenfranchised, discriminated against, and exploited. But that was a very different idea of what it meant to be a lawyer than they were teaching at Harvard Law School. Law school was mostly about more traditional pursuits of the law and primarily about getting a highly paid corporate firm job. There was little training and literally no job openings for someone who wanted to be the kind of lawyer that I wanted to be. And so instead of getting discouraged, I decided to try and create my dream job. So I called up Stuart Quo, who's a Committee of 100 member and the founder and executive director of the Asian Pacific American Legal Center. And I pitched to him my idea that low-wage Asian workers who are daily denied their most basic rights on the job needed legal support to tell their stories and to fight for their rights. And I said that I would try to get a fellowship so that I could fund myself. And to my delight and great relief, Stuart agreed, and this launched my career. 14 years later, I've represented hundreds of garment workers who sew 10, 12, sometimes more hours a day without minimum wage or overtime. They work in fear, and they develop health problems because they're not allowed to use the bathroom. We have brought lawsuits and changed the law because we sue not only the sweatshops, but also the large companies, the brand name labels, and the retail stores who profit off of the workers' labor. And I've also represented Asian Americans, African Americans, and Latinos who were denied jobs at Abercrombie and Fitch because the company decided that their all-American look required a basically all-white workforce. And we said no, and that case resulted in a $40 million nationwide class settlement. But my clients are all people who believe that they didn't have a voice, and that they should put their heads down and say nothing. And through the language of law, they found a way to tell their stories and to demand change. One of my clients was a garment worker from Thailand who, on the day that she was going to begin second grade, she put on her second-hand school uniform and waited by the door. But that day, her parents told her to take off her school clothes because she would no longer be going to school. They needed her to watch her younger brothers while they went out to work in the fields. And Suchadal cried and refused to take off her school clothes. And then for days afterwards, she continued to put on her uniform, hoping that things would change and she would get to return to her education.